Welcome to Moving Forward, conversations on culture, identity, healing, and hope. I'm your host, Linda Anderson, and I created this podcast as a space for real, heartfelt conversations with people who are reflecting, evolving, and boldly stepping into what's next. This podcast was born out of my own journey through seasons of loss, transition, and transformation, and my belief that healing happens when we come together to share our stories. My hope is that these conversations will inspire you to pause, reflect, and find courage as you move forward in your own life. Today, I am honored to sit down with Dr. Kim Wallace, a visionary leader, published author, and passionate advocate for equity and belonging. For more than 30 years of experience, Kim began her career as a high school English teacher and history teacher, later becoming a site principal, district administrator, and superintendent of one of California's largest school districts. Today, she serves as associate director of the 21st Century California School Leadership Academy at UC Berkeley School of Education and leads her consulting company, Process Makes Perfect, helping leaders across industries navigate systems, change, and create meaningful impact. Kim is the author of 2 books, Leading the Launch and Leading Through an Equity Lens, and her upcoming book, Game-Changing Leadership in Action, explores how we can lead with purpose and courage in any field or setting. In our conversation, we'll explore what it really means to create cultures of belonging, lead through uncertainty, and move forward with hope. Whether you're leading a team, a classroom, a company, or simply yourself through life's transitions. So wherever you are in your journey, this episode is for you. So here we go. Let's dive in. Hi, Kim, and welcome.
Thank you so much.
And I have to say, I got to add to this too, that I am so thankful to be here and working with Kim and questioning with Kim and having conversation. Kim and I were fortunate to work together when we were in the previous district. And Kim was actually my boss, the superintendent, as we stated. So again, I'm just very thankful to be here and hear Kim's responses to these questions. It has been an honor not only to work with her, but stay in contact with her and also just to be a friend with Kim. So here we go. Kim has a lot to share. So Kim, you grew up in a household of educators and have spent over 30 years in public education. But looking back, what first inspired you to become an educator?
My parents definitely inspired me to become an educator, even though both of them told me that they would never encourage me to go into teaching. They were both high school teachers. They actually met at the high school that they were teaching at. And they obviously were very dedicated and spent both of their careers at the same place for over 30 years themselves. And so I just assumed I would go into being a high school teacher and teach in the same place where I went to school for the same amount of decades. I decided probably around age 16 that I would go into teaching, and I had 2 particularly amazing teachers in high school, Jeff Goldstein, who was my history teacher, and Claire Lapel, who was my English teacher, who really inspired me to become a teacher. And I went back and actually taught right side by side with them in Castro Valley, and it was most amazing experience to have them as a teacher for when I was a young person, but also they taught me so much of what I know about teaching as well.
And as the listeners are listening, I'm hearing too. I'm going to learn probably more about Kim than I've known also. So such a great story and so much inspiration that she'll give us all. And you have held many roles, as I stated in the beginning, from a teacher, principal, superintendent, consultant, and now associate director of UC Berkeley. If you had to describe your journey in 3 words, what would they be and why?
My 3 words would never say never. Like I said, I thought I would be a teacher my entire career. I loved teaching in the classroom, and never imagined myself being a principal or a director or assistant superintendent or superintendent. And none of that was in my plan. And so my three words are never say never, because you limit yourself that way. And if you can't envision yourself being something else, that's okay. Sometimes you just get tapped on the shoulder for your next move. And that's essentially how I followed my career, is that every time a door opened, I thought, is that a door that I want to walk through? Is that a door being opened on purpose? Is that something that appeals to me? And I have to say that not every job was exactly my perfect fit. I was a director of instructional technology for about 18 months, and it was a huge stretch for me. I love the instructional technology part, but I found that I was dealing with broken servers and cold rooms and all kinds of different things that I actually really wasn't quite equipped to inform anybody about. But it was a great experience learning, and it set me up for my next position because I just collected all of these various skill sets along the way that I thought would never be applicable to any new situation. And all of a sudden, I'm leaning on these previous experiences that I had through the variety of districts that I've worked in, 4 total in California. And so just be open-minded and never say never.
And listeners don't really know our journey together, but I'm chuckling a little bit just because of our experiences together, and the never say never. It's so awesome you've said those words, because that was what I've learned from Kim, is never say never and just keep pushing forward. So on that note, this next wonder for me is you have written a lot about systems change in education. What does systems change mean to you, and why is it so essential for school leaders today?
Oh, if we don't change our systems along with how our society is changing and our students are changing and the generations that follow, then we're providing an education that's of the past and not of the future. And that can be very challenging for us to envision what is that future that we personally haven't lived yet, but that will be relevant and connected to our students' lives and their opportunities that are awaiting them. And so I think that systems are put in place for good reasons. And at the time, you are attempting to bring order to chaos and to create structures that work for people, but they can also be stifling and suffocating even to some students or families or staff even that don't necessarily fit in those molds. And so I always look at systems and structures in the sense of, are they healthy and serving the purpose that education is meant for today? Or are they hindering and thwarting our efforts to really be responsive to our student and staff's needs of the moment and the future that we can't even see yet? And so to me, it's always about questioning the systems. It doesn't necessarily mean changing them immediately, but questioning and interrogating them to see whether or not they really are still serving that need. And if they're not, you have to dismantle them and start anew. And I just think leaving things stagnant and static, it's not realistic for the ecosystem that we live in, which is a very dynamic educational ecosystem.
And again, when working with Kim, Kim did not say stagnant. And this next question is actually about the book about leading the launch. And I was able to experience this with Kim when, as the director, I was the director and Kim was the assistant superintendent of instruction. And in your book, Kim, Leading the Launch, you outline a 10-stage process. So to the listeners, I went through that 10-stage process, and it was, again, one of the biggest learning curves of my life, because I had to follow a process, and it was very important. But in order to implement successful district initiatives, which we had a lot of at that time. So Kim, what stage do leaders tend to struggle with the most, and how can they overcome it?
It is, yes, we worked on this side by side, and it actually was generated from our experiences as a team of 7 directors and plus me as the leader. When I got to the school district, we were drowning in initiatives. We had so many different initiatives that people had decided that were great ideas for kids or for staff or for families. But the implementation was struggling because there was no vetting process in place to decide, is this the right thing at the right time for the right audience? And so when we created this process, I definitely used you all as guinea pigs, and I think we nuanced it and dealt with it together. And but once we got good at it, I felt like we were able to prioritize things better and to say, okay, it's not that anybody's ideas are bad or that anybody is bringing forward something that shouldn't be done. It's just that you can't do everything all at once, and you have to figure out what is going to move the needle for the populations that you are trying to reach most of all, and in what order. And so we figured out that there were many stages that were left out, and a lot of it was in the front end. Sometimes you have a good idea. This is what leaders do. I have a great idea. Let's implement A, B, or C, a new grading policy, a new way of doing school pickup and drop off. It can be operational, it can be curricular, it can be anything. But somebody who has an idea and says, okay, let's do something differently or let's do something new, to not go from that moment to let's implement. And that's often what happens. You just skip all the middle steps. You need to get stakeholder engagement. You need to do some research on what other people are doing. You need to look at some data and do some piloting to see on a small scale whether or not it's going to have the effects that you're looking for. You need to vet it with a team before you go solo. And so all of those stages are the first 1 through 6 in my process. And then 7 is you decide at that moment, do we go forward with it? Do we put it on hold? Or do we stop it completely because it's not gonna work? And then once you hit that decision-making stage, stage 8 is actually the next stage, which is provide professional development and training and learning opportunities for the people who are supposed to implement. And you don't actually get to implement until stage 9. And so you have to do tons and tons of legwork in order to lay the stage for people being ready to accept it and to understand it and to be able to put it into action. And then stage 10 is ongoing support, because you can't just leave it out to self-sustain. You have to figure out how you're going to onboard new people who don't know about the initiative, how you're going to refresh people who are involved in it, but maybe things have changed along the way. And so that's why the process has been really successful for the folks that I've introduced it to.
And I'm sitting here thinking about, as I'm listening to you, that was back then, I want to say 10, 12 years ago, if I can remember. But now what we're facing in education is even more demands with changes, especially after going through the pandemic and now with AI and so on. So right now, how do you guide leaders, though, to focus on what really matters most is without losing sight of equity and student-centered outcomes?
Well, that's exactly why I wrote the second book, which is Leading Through an Equity Lens, because the first book it can capture any sort of topic. But what I realized as people were working their way through the book was that if you don't do this with a lens on your most marginalized students, and you're just continuing to support the people who already have what they need, and accelerate their learning process, then we're not actually changing the system to the degree that it needs to be changed. Because when you support the students who are struggling the most, it's like the rising tides lift all boats concept. And so when you focus on the students who are really needing the most access and opportunity to strong educational outcomes, then you really support the whole system to be stronger and healthier as a unit. And so the second book is really about, am I perpetuating inequity? Am I perpetuating bias? Am I perpetuating structures that actually are limiting opportunities, or am I opening up the playing field to everybody? And so it just makes you look at the process with a deeper look at helping or harming. And I believe all educators are well-intentioned. I don't believe that anybody goes into this business to hurt kids, but sometimes we inadvertently do when we create structures and barriers that don't allow them to foster their learning interests and their they're different ways of shining as human beings in our school systems.
Mhm. I think you might have touched on this, but I just want to bring it up again. How would you help? I'm saying educators, but anybody confront their own biases and blind spots while fostering, though, inclusive identity affirming, spaces for students and staff. I think you might have touched on that, but I wanted to get the keywords of biases and blind spots.
Well, we have to look at ourselves first
Mm.
because none of us are free of bias or blind spots. I have them, you have them, we all have them. So let's get that out of the way. We don't have to pretend that we don't have things that run through our heads that are, built from our schema from past experiences and from what our parents taught us and just what we see on the news and everywhere else. So I just like to start with straight up, we all have biases. We all have blind spots. We all have places where we need to confront some of the things that we think and some of the ways that we act. And I give examples of how, when I was a younger teacher, I did some things that were they're cringeworthy now. For example, when I was a teacher, I was around other teachers who, you know, I borrowed some of their ideas and some of my ideas I had on my own. And I had this idea that I thought was super inspiring to kids. And it turned out that it was not at all. I posted their grades on the wall, but with their
Mm.
ID number, so nobody could see their name actually, but I did it in rank order from A to F because I thought it would inspire the kids getting Fs to want to ascend to an A grade. It absolutely goes in the face of everything that we know about student learnings and development. And what I did was shame people. And what I did with that was discourage kids. And so for me, it's about questioning those things that we either have inherited from other folks or that we think oh, this is a fantastic idea. And it ends up being demotivating or damaging in some other ways. And I have dozens and dozens of examples like that. To me, it's about learning and doing better, knowing better and doing better. And so don't beat yourself up about it. I did a stupid thing back in the day when I was 22-year-old high school teacher. I don't do that anymore. But it's really about making you question yourself about where is this coming from? Is it coming from a place of really, even if it's good and well intentioned, what is the impact? And so always look for what are the potential impacts of what this move might be, and to look at it through an equity lens is an important way to catch yourself in those biases.
Mhm. Well, actually, three keywords jumped out at me too. Well, first of all, change, and you say it right there. I mean, you're constantly changing, and then moving forward, which is the title of this podcast. I mean, we're always moving forward. We're making those changes, and that is another thing that I learned from you, and in both of your books that I've read, talk a lot about that, and I appreciate that you give examples because I think that'll help. If the listeners haven't read the book yet, I really highly encourage that you do read both of them. So another question I wanted to find out though is about healing. So the pandemic, the current political divides, the systemic inequities have left many educators exhausted.
Yeah.
How can leaders prioritize healing, not only for their school communities, but also for themselves?
This is a huge, huge question, and one that I think we've been grappling with nationally, if not internationally. Um, and I don't have a pat answer for it because I think healing's different for each person. And healing collectively is a whole additional element because what people respond to and how people interact may be different. For example, Linda, from you, I learned I love the moment that I walked into your office one day and I said, okay, Linda, I need A, B, C, D. And you said, hi, Kim, how are you doing today? How are things going? And I thought, oh my goodness, this is hilarious because you know me and I'm a very get it done sort of person and
Mhm.
I am organized and I've got all the things. But you actually taught me so many important lessons throughout my career. But one of them was actually to slow down and see the human being behind all the stuff
Mm.
and how you respond to that human being and honoring their humanity is really important because I was treating people in some ways like I need you to give me something. Like this is where we're working on a project together, and I was seeing it through that experience rather than we are need to know each other and we need to learn each other and we need to find ways to connect. And you and I are so completely different, and we learned so much from each other. And I just credit you so much with softening my heart, truly, because you helped me see that that is a key leadership trait. It's not about getting all the stuff done and checking off my to-do list. It's really about connecting with the people because we're in the business of people, really. And so I do want to just say that that distinctly helped me be a better human being, much less a better leader. But how I heal is different from how you may heal. And so I want to respect that as well. And, I came out of my superintendency pretty damaged. I need to do a lot of healing. And what I would say to leaders is don't get to the point that I got to. Figure out sooner that you are that you're being injured or that you're experiencing harm. And don't wait till you're past the point of no return. Don't wait to a place where you're in the ICU, mentally or emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that was an important lesson for me because once I decided to leave, even though it was on my own accord, I experienced a lot of pain from that decision, and it took me many months to heal. And you can't rush the healing process, and so there's no easy answer to that question.
Sure.
But I would say let's respect each other's humanity just as the bottom line.
Kim, but I think, and I know you're writing this third book and it's going to come out. I don't know if it's coming out this year or next year.
It's coming out next month, October 20th.
Oh, great. So, and
Yeah.
it's titled Game Changing Leadership in Action. So it kind of goes with what you were just saying. So how does this upcoming book, which I think you might have already answered, build on your previous work?
Yeah, I struggled with this third book because the other ones were very like follow this step, move on to this step, and it was very linear. This one was not a linear book, and I think that's a good thing because it had me grappling with many different elements of good leadership. And so what I finally landed on is that there are three main domains that leaders operate within. The first domain is the personal and interpersonal. It's the know yourself, mobilize support among others, build your alliances. And then the second domain is related to your setting and your surroundings, the environmental domain. So it's where you're working, the people and the neighborhoods and the city or town or districts surrounding it, and how to really leverage your connections in those spaces and figure out how to make that learning environment fruitful for your staff and your students and your families. And then the third domain is about systems and structures and about figuring out ways to design your schools so that they meet the needs of the future and to really understand that what we create has ripple effects throughout the entire system. And so changing one thing can actually change many others. And so the book leads you through these three domains. And one of the similarities, but expanded upon in this new book, is there are, I think, over 35 learning resources for leaders to do. So it's activities, it's conversations, it's checklists, it's design elements. There are so many takeaways that people can do on their sites with their leadership teams or at the district office. They can use it as it's 6 distinct learning modules. You can do learning modules throughout the year as a book study. And so I purposely designed it that way because I wanted it to be very action oriented and customizable.
So I'm excited. I get another book to read, Game Changing Leadership in Action. So in that respect, though, there are so many emerging trends right now happening in education, but which one excites you the most and which one concerns you the most?
It's the same answer to both, and that's
Okay.
AI.
Ah,
Yeah.
and why?
I think it's super exciting, and I'm using AI tools myself, and it's revolutionizing. I'm like, wow, how cool are these tools? My goodness, in terms of just the immediate spitting back of information in ways that are just pretty incredible. And also, just the building off of the AI tools. I like to interact with AI in ways where I ask it to do something, it being Chat GPT or whatever the tool is that you're using. And then I iterate and I'm like, that's not really what I wanted. And now I want this, and now I want this. I think you have to engage. What worries me most is people taking it as like verbatim, like this is what Chat GPT gave me, and now I'm going to act on it. Well, what if it's biased? What if it's racist?
Mm,
What if it's sexist? Because what it
mm,
does is it gathers all the information that's out there on the web. So it may be gathering resources that are damaging
mm,
and built on things that we don't necessarily want to be replicating in the
mhm,
world. So those are two places where I see AI as having a lot of power. It's got power for good and power for evil, just like many tools out there. And so for me, it's just like media literacy back in the day when we're teaching kids how to, read the newspaper, read news sources for whether or not they are legitimate sources. I think we're going to have to do that tenfold with AI. And there can be a lot of deep fake information out there, and things that can be, they can fool you. And we
yeah.
don't want people to be fooled.
No, and it is hard right now, I think, for anybody out there anywhere with AI,
Yeah.
trying to understand it and what to do next. So, Kim, just the final wonder here. If you could leave the listeners with one challenge or invitation to reflect on their own leadership, regardless of what profession they're in, what would it be?
Be you.
Mm,
Because we see so many people who are leaders, and we like to have role models. We like to emulate other folks, but every single person who has a leadership title and people who don't even have a title and act as a leader, to me, titles don't matter. I don't care, superintendent, Dr. Wallace, like none of that matters to me. What matters is me having the heart and soul and spirit to be a leader. And so don't get caught up on the term is number one. And what you bring to the table is uniquely what your school district, company, family, anybody that you are in a leadership space with need. And that trying to be somebody else, first of all, it doesn't work and it comes off as inauthentic. And and second of all, what you bring is different from what I bring. And we talked about that already, Linda. Where you come from is just this place of heart and spirit and this lovely like social emotional dynamic. And I come from this very analytical space and very
mm,
clinical in a lot of ways. And the world needs both of us, right?
mhm,
And the table needs more of us. And we need people who are the future envisioners, and we need people who are the designers and the architects. And so that's what I try to say to leaders. You can't be all things to all people. There will always be people who are unhappy with your leadership. There will always be people who love you as a leader. But I just say it's easier to stick to doing leadership the way that you do it. And that's not to say that you um, have that identity and not have it change. My leadership identity has changes almost on a daily basis,
mhm.
in the sense that I'm learning and growing and stretching more. And what I did 10 years ago is not what I would do today. And I like that. And don't look at the past with regret. We've made tons of mistakes in our experiences. But those are the ones that really stick with, okay, that doesn't match who I want to be today in this moment, and what does, and to really examine those soul searching conversations within yourself, and to always be growing and learning. We were always students first.
Mhm.
And so that's what I always go back to. What do I need to be a student of today and in this moment in order to be a better leader tomorrow?
Okay, so people can't see us, they're listening to us. And just to the listeners, I have tears, and like Kim said, I have a heart, and just to hear Kim again is just so empowering to me. And I want to thank everybody for joining us on this episode of Moving Forward. But the conversations, the 4 conversations that I have targeted, culture, identity, healing, and hope, was so a part of this podcast. And I cannot thank Kim enough for sharing her wisdom, her journey, and her deep commitment to equity, transformation, leadership. You all heard that. Her insights remind us that creating a space of belonging isn't just a professional responsibility. And I want you to really hear these next words. It's a personal human one. And remember that moving forward is more about conversations. It's about healing, hope, and growth together. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, share, and help us build this community. Until next time, remember, keep breathing, keep showing up, and keep moving forward. Bye, Kim.
Thank you so much, Linda.